as well, so that you have a reference for later. If you have any questions, by the way, please make sure that you actually, let me know via global chat or, private message. Like, it's okay to interrupt me, especially if you're not sort of following what I'm trying to cover here. I just want to make sure that you guys are actually understanding what it is I'm trying to cover. All right, so this is what I got here right now. So this is a basic project, which should look similar to what you have now. So you've got, I've got a FPS controller object, which is my avatar. And I've got the various, like assets that I downloaded. So in my case, I got like a barrel, set of barrels that I just randomly placed around on the floor. And I've also got this neat little radio here on top of this barrel right here. If I play around, if I just play the scene, so yep, I can move around in my scene, but I can't really do anything right now, so I don't have an interaction. Now, what I actually want to do for this live demo is I actually want to be able to play music. So if I click my mouse cursor or invisible mouse cursor while I'm looking at the radio, I want it to actually play music right now. So that is what we're going to do. So remember, to set up an active interaction, going back to those 2 points that I covered in the slides. So we need to detect user input while using the application. And we need to be able to call the method from the audio source component that will actually play that audio file that we want to play. So the music. So first off, before we actually create the script that will actually instruct, the radio to play the music when we click on it, we need to set up our components first in the game object. So right now, if I select the radio game object here, there's no components attached. It's just a transform component, and it just has the model on it. Now, first thing that we need to do is we need to add an audio source component, because that, again, is what's going to house our audio file, and that is what we're going to use to actually play the music. So while you have the game object selected, so in my case, the radio, you want to go ahead and move over to the inspector window on the right and click Add Component. And in the search bar that appears, you can just go ahead and search up audio source, or just this one right here. And that should add that component on our radio game object. Also, feel free to follow along, by the way, if you already have your project open. Again, if you get stuck in a step, just let me know, and I can go back, retrace my steps so that you sort of figure out how to actually get past that hurdle. Now, in the audio source component that we just made, we need to assign an audio clip that the audio source component will actually play. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to open up File Explorer, and I'm just going to quickly navigate to like a folder that contains the file that I want to use. So I have an MP3 file that I want to use for this particular demo. Sorry about that. Let me just navigate to the correct project. There we go. So I've got an MP3 file. It's just some random music that I got from like a game that I was playing. So I'm going to go ahead and import that to my project by dragging and dropping it from the File Explorer to the project view on my editor window. And if you've done that step correctly, you should be able to see the MP3 file listed in your assets list. Now, next we need to assign that to our audio source component. So again, we just need to select, we need to select our radio object to bring up the audio source component again in the inspector. And then going to the project view tab, we just need to drag the MP3 file into the audio clip property on the audio source component right here. And again, you've done that correctly because you can see this audio clip listing the MP3 file itself. All right, so that is it for the main component. Now, remember what I said earlier. I want the audio source to play the clip when I actually click on it with the mouse. So if we go back to the slides, right, and go to the detecting user input section, you'll know that that situation is basically mouse click on game objects. So we can actually just take the code snippet on that and put that into our custom script. But remember what I said earlier, if you want on mouse down to work, you actually need to have a collider component on your game object. So let's go back to the editor and add that in. So again, I'm just going to click Add Component in the inspector window, and this time I'm going to look up Collider. And I'll just use like a normal box collider for this. It doesn't really matter. I'll probably resize that a bit as well so that it is a bit more suitable for our needs, and also just move that a bit. Yeah, something like that should do. All right. So that should be every component that we need for the script to work. So now we can actually go ahead and create that custom script. So going to our project view, again, at the bottom of our editor window, right-click on any empty part of your window here to bring up the pop-up menu. Select Create, and then select C# script on the right-hand menu that pops up. And again, remember that I want this to, you want your names to be descriptive for your scripts. So since I want audio to play when I click on the mouse button, I'm just going to go ahead and name this play music on mouse press or something. There we go. And I'm just going to move that there. And also, what I'm going to do before I open it up on my Visual Studio program, I'm just going to go ahead and attach this straight away to the radio game object. So while I have the radio selected, I'm just going to drag the play mouse on mouse press file from the project view to the inspector view here. And if you've done that correctly, you should be able to see play music on mouse press right here. All right, and now that we've attached that to our game object, we can simply just double click on the script to actually open it up in Visual Studio. Now, Visual Studio is one of the programs that you can use to edit your script files. You should have installed that alongside with Unity while you were doing your setup on your personal machine back in week 1. If you're having any issues with Visual Studio or you haven't installed it yet and you can't install it for some reason, please let me know on private chat, by the way, and I can follow up with you on that later on. All right. So that opens up there. So this is basically how a normal script would look like when you open it up in Visual Studio for the first time. We don't really need void update here because we're not going to be using that for our input. So let's just go ahead and delete that. And now going back to our slide here. So we just need the on mouse down event, method to detect that mouse input. So we can just copy this method here in our script. So I'm just going to go ahead and type private void and then on mouse down. And that should add in the method that we need. And now we just need to write in the piece of code that actually plays the audio file from the audio source right there. All right, so that's detecting the user input down. Next, we need to actually get the reference to the audio source component. And remember that we've attached the script here on the same object as the audio source component here, which means that if we go back to the slides here, this would mean that we will need to use the first code snippet here, which is, like again, if you have the same, if you have the component and the script attached to the same game object, then you'll use this code snippet here. So what we need is we need a variable to house our component reference here. Now in this example, it's transform, but because we're using an audio source, we'll need to change that to audio source. And then inside the start method, we need in the get component method call right here. So let's just go ahead and do that now in our scripts. So private and then audio source, and then my audio source right here. And again, it doesn't really matter what the name is. That is completely up to you. Next, again, on the start method, we need to call the getComponent method in order to actually get that reference. So my audio source equals getComponent. And you need to specify the name of the component as the type. So again, audio source. And that should do it nicely. And now that you have the reference to the component itself, you just need to be able to, you just need to write the code that actually plays the audio file when we click on it. So under on mouse down, you just need to go ahead and type my audio source dot and then play. So remember that play method is the play method is the method that actually plays the script file. Now, I already know that from experience in the past, but if you're in a situation where you're using a component and you don't know, what any of the methods do or what the property does, again, that's where the documentation comes in. So usually what I do is I just Google, Unity API and then audio source, for example. And usually the first result that Google provides will link me to the actual documentation page for that component. And again, it's usually a matter of trying to find, given the information you have available in front of you, to see if you can actually find the relevant points. So again, I want to be able to play music. So if I just have a look at the description here, you'll see that it actually says you can play a single audio clip using play, pause, and stop. So I've already got what I'm looking for. And if I go ahead and click on the play link here, that actually brings me to the method details page. Again, just shows me like a description of the method and the example usage in code. So again, you'll be using that as reference on how to use the method itself, which is really handy. All right, so now we've actually got everything that we need for this interaction between the user and the radio. So now, if we go back to our editor and save our project, and then test play. Now, unfortunately, you won't be able to hear this because my screen share doesn't actually share audio as well. But you'll know one thing that if you were following all along during this live demo and you hit the play button as soon as you save that script file, you'll notice that the music that's linked to the audio source is playing as soon as the application starts. That's because if you have a look at the audio source component here, you'll notice that one of the properties is called play on awake, and it's currently ticked. And basically what that property means is that if this checkbox is ticked, then it will actually play the audio regardless of what happens as soon as the application starts up. So you just want to untick that. Again, to figure out information about these properties here in the components, you can refer to the API documentation for that. If you go under properties here and go down the list, you should be able to see actually play on awake here. And again, description, if set to true, the audio source should automatically start playing on awake. So yeah. All right, so now again, we save after changing the audio source component and then test it out in play mode. And now, if I actually click on, so remember that the cursor, even though it's invisible, it is actually located at the very center of your screen. So if you just want to be able to interact with objects with your mouse, just make sure that your game object is actually centered in your view like so. And now if I click, the audio starts playing, so the music. And again, you can't hear that because of like the way screen share works, but that's basically it. So that's already an active interaction between the user and the application, where if the user clicks on the mouse while facing the radio, it will actually play music, right? So that's a really basic one, but it does count. Now, at this point, this is where you start to figure some stuff out. So are you happy with how the interaction works? If so, you then move on to the next interaction that you need to implement and then repeat the process again. or do you want to sort of improve the experience within the interaction? So right now, the way we've actually coded this, right, in the script, or this brings up. Yeah. So when you click on the radio with the mouse, it will just start playing the audio. It will not actually stop playing the music until it actually gets to the end. Also, you have no way of, like stopping the audio from playing while it's in the middle of, going through that track. You don't have a way to change to different music files if, say, you want to shuffle to a different track, for example. And that's where the multiple iterations of your interaction would come in. Like, do you want to address that by making the interaction more complex? So yeah, that's where, testing and, iterating on your current implementation comes into play. And you'll be doing that depending on, like how complex you actually want the overall interaction to be in your application. Also, another thing as well with the way this code is written, as long as your mouse actually lines up, so the center of your screen lines up with the radio, it will actually play that music regardless of how far you are from the radio. So yeah, I'm clicking right now, and because my radio is centered, so it's actually still hitting my mouse cursor, and it will play. So another improvement that you can probably do with this is you can implement a distance check between the avatar and the radio. Now, I'm not going to go through how to do that because you can look that up on your own. So to give you a clue, you will be using the transform component to check the position of both the avatar and then the radio, and then comparing distances. Or there are other online videos out there that actually tell you how to do that particular step. So you can just customize that and then put that into your own custom script. All right, so that is pretty much it for the live demo.